it's like, it's the question that you don't even know that you have to ask me. So for example, things about Ahmedabad, like why haven't I told you? It's because you don't even know that you have to ask me about Ahmedabad, right? So for example, let's say I was talking to X person, then I've never talked about those things. Yeah. So those things would never come up.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why.
But it's interesting. I imagine your female friends have opened up to you about their relationships in general.
Yep.
Yeah. But okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, but these things, like, or a lot of times it's also the negative part. Like, for example, let's say bad experiences that I have had, let's say with some of the people that I've been close to. It's not that something that I go and tell to my female friends.
Yeah, I think there is like that gender aspect, like women feel more comfortable telling other women.
Probably, I don't know. Yeah. But when you started working for that, that's when I looked into it. And some of the numbers were alarming, and I didn't know that it existed, right? Yeah. So then I started asking people, and that's when I got to know one or two stories. Again, that was like stories that people around me had heard. So, and I thought that only existed in rural part of India. Like even people around me in India didn't really talk about these things.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, and that could be like the level of social strata that you come from, and bunch of things, right? Majority of women that I know have owned their businesses, employs people, whether it's my mom or aunts or whatever, right? So, and they have been in position of power. So that's why I didn't come across. I want to know how prevalent domestic violence or abuse in Australia is, especially with South Asian women.
I think it's incredibly prevalent, and I've got some stats here for you. So in Australia, it says 2 out of 5 women, that's 39%, experience violence since the age of 15. Oh, wow. And 35% are more likely to experience that from someone they know. I think in our community, we're always worried about someone's going to attack you on the street. Yeah. Someone random, but usually it's not someone from the street. Usually it's someone you know, your partner, your uncle, your family, your boyfriend, your partner. So usually it's someone you know. 1 woman a week is killed in Australia as a result of domestic violence. And in Victoria, I'm from Victoria, every 6 minutes the police attends a domestic violence call. At someone's house, like a domestic violence incident, every 6 minutes. It is very prevalent. And then there's another stat that I don't have on me, but migrant women are more likely to experience it. There's not specific stats on like cultural groups, and I think that one of the reasons they don't do that, because I actually looked into that, I was like, what about Indian people? What about South Asian? Why aren't there exact stats? I think one of the reasons that organizations are reluctant to release those is because of racism. Because then they don't want people to say, oh, see, Indian men are terrible. Because if you start saying Indian women experience more, then what's the calculation? This community is barbaric. This community. So that's one of the reasons people steer clear of that, because of this.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so I think it's very, very common. I've met, when I started sort of Soul House, which I think we'll talk about later, I have had maybe over 500 women share their domestic violence story with me. God. I wish I was counting properly, but it just comes through. I had one come through last week, someone married from America. They've came here on visa and now their partner is just like abusing them. People will often send me their stories because I have shared some of my own stories. Okay. And so then people feel comfortable. One is I'm a woman. 2 is I have a lived experience of having had some of these experiences myself. So they feel, because then they know that I'm not going to judge them. Yeah. And they know I'm from a similar cultural background as well. That also helps a lot, because they're like, oh, she'll understand why I might stay. Yeah. Why I might stay in this marriage for another 5 years despite. And it's not always in marriages. Sometimes it's siblings. Abuse, sometimes siblings is common, sometimes it's from parents. So I think it's very common in Australia, and I think our community doesn't want to talk about it because this is really interesting. I think one of the things in the East versus Western culture, in the West, a big factor that sometimes drives people is guilt. They feel guilt about something. Okay. In the East, it's shame. Okay. Shame is a bigger factor. And the reason, if you think of what shame means, it's about perception and what your community think. So when it comes to domestic violence, I think it's one of the most shameful things to admit that you've been a victim of domestic violence.
Wow. Isn't it more shameful if somebody tells that this person abused me, and then it would be shame for them?
It should be, but it's not. the burden of shame seems to rest with women and seems to rest with the abused in our culture and community. Because if you think about it, a lot of women who have been assaulted or sexually assaulted, usually people say, oh, just don't tell anyone.
But yeah, that's crazy.
So I think that shame seems to sit with women because we place this whole is it thing on women, right?
Yeah.
So I think our community doesn't speak up about it, but it's very common. And the other thing that was interesting, I think you said, oh, you know, women who are very strong, who have always been in positions of leadership, so you're not very across this.
Mm-hmm.
I have heard directly from women who are executives, who are in very strong leadership positions, who have experienced domestic violence. So it's not necessarily that sometimes there's the ideal victim that we think of, who is weak, who doesn't have a lot of financial support, who hasn't got a lot of confidence. But sometimes it's also women who are powerful, who are in strong positions of power, who are financially set, who have also experienced domestic violence. And I've met and talked to some of these women. And sometimes it's like this really I remember speaking to a woman who was experiencing DV, domestic violence, and she was the breadwinner. She brought all the money in. And so to me, at first, I was like, how is tu chhade no? You know, this dropkick.
Yeah, why would you let it go on?
Culture. She's married to him. What will her family say? A divorce. There are so many women who would rather stay in abuse than be divorced.
Oh my
the
God.
stigma related to divorced, because, you know, if you think of dating apps and Shadi.com, they will never marry a divorced woman. So then they think, oh, when will I ever find a partner again? So I may as well stick out with this guy that, you know, most of the day I go to work, you know, sometimes he gets drunk or he's abusive, but 90% is good. I would deal with the 10%, rather than be a divorcee and never find a partner again. Because that's what our culture has told us about divorcees, which is crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like people say, oh, India, you know, Indians have a lower divorce rate. I'm like, is that for a good reason or a bad reason?
How many people are happy?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We'd rather be in a bad marriage
Yeah.
than happily divorced because of what society has conditioned us to believe.